Hi guys, Mir here with another video. Today we're going to be talking about Imperial Mandate and the changes that it's going to receive tomorrow. So, old Imperial Mandate used to put a mark on people that dealt 10% of current health damage whenever you used to slow or immobilize people. This made it very good on Nami because she could E an ally, which made their next ability or attack slow, and then they would immediately proc the damage part themselves. Of course, this also worked on immobilizing effects, but the new mandate is actually going to only proc this mark on immobilizing people. Instead of doing current health damage, you will make this person vulnerable, which means they take extra damage from all incoming sources. You would also get haste on immobilizing effects, which are all the hard CCs, so not silences or slows. These changes are going to alter the user base of Imperial Mandate heavily, which is why I have made a tier list of champions I predict that will use this item the best. We're going to be starting off with the following. These champions aren't necessarily ordered from left to right, but I do believe Nico will be one of the very, very good users, for the simple reason that she likes to go Rocket Belt for her engage, but after that, she doesn't really have a fixed item. She can go support items with utility, she can go mage items, but this sits right in between those. And it amps all of her engage damage on her E and alt, and it also amps her own damage on the triggering instance, as you can see here in this clip. We're also going to be talking about Alistar, which may come as a surprise to some people, but I haven't necessarily talked about this a lot yet, but as you can see here, the cooldowns of Alistar are 8.13 seconds right now, with 28 haste. Now, if we go ahead and buy Imperial Mandate in a second, you will see that that cooldown is going to alter, and this applies to all of his basic abilities, because they all have some form of CC in them. So right now we buy Imperial Mandate. We still have the same amount of haste, but our cooldowns are now at 7.25 seconds. This makes it absolutely fantastic, and he also has 250% AP ratios, which makes the AP not wasted at all. If you look, Alistar is already a very strong champion, but some people aren't catching on to some hidden builds. Electrocute seems to be performing very well, as we can see on Coachless, and Shirelia's, paired with Electrocute, is doing extremely well. It's not hard to imagine that the new Imperial Mandate will probably serve that purpose even better in some games where you can go burst, or where you have to really prioritize, let's say, an Enchanter and Hyper Carry duo. And as a rule of thumb, this will apply to most engaged champions because they're getting their runes buffed, like Aftershock and Guardian. And if they have some form of AoE engage, as well as some form of inbuilt tankiness, like let's say a Mumu or Alistar or Leona, they will heavily benefit from this in games where they must burst the enemy. A subclass which this applies to are the catcher champions. So for example, Thresh or Swain even will really enjoy this change, because in some games they're already wanting sort of mana regen and more movement speed type builds where they focus heavily on catching people with Swifties, let's say. But now this gives them an item that really suits this playstyle even more. Last but not least, we have the roaming champions. Now, a champion sitting in between these two classes is Galio. He is a sort of catching champ, but he's also a very supportive champ that plays for his team. So he will really like this item, and of course there's Twisted Fate. He already likes going Shirelia's Battle Song, as we can see here, and this item has the same stat profile, but is just going to give him even more burst on his gold card. Elise is also a champion that really seems to be doing quite well in support. She's not picked that much, but she should be, and she already has two kind of divergent builds, the most popular being full AP, but that exists in the expensive mage item space, but there's also another build which focuses on bundle pipes and protoplasm harness, so tankiness and playing around her E and being annoying, and this item will allow her to exist in both those spaces at once. If you look here, the amount of burst you get on the combos is almost identical for both Storm Surge and Imperial Mandate with a Amp Tome, which is the same price. And another cool synergy is with Blood Song, which is the support Sheen item, which procs on auto attacks, of course, and makes people vulnerable as well. So these two effects are going to stack for a total of 12% vulnerable on enemies. Now that's a lot of extra damage coming in from yourself, but also your teammates. And a lot of these champions can actually use it quite well. For example, Leona or Elise, or even like a Nautilus. So there's definitely a lot of stuff to look out for. Some notable interactions are that this triggers on Shaco boxes as well as Shaco ultimate. It also triggers on Seraphine E, so it gives her E more haste as well, even when it's not necessarily stunning people. Zoe will obviously benefit from this a lot. It does not trigger on all of Fiddlestick's abilities, in the sense that it won't give them all haste, but it's still a very good item to allow him to have a lot more burst. And as you can see, there are quite a lot of champions that will benefit from this in the support role, which opens them up to being more flexible picks. One such example is, for example, Talia, who gets haste on her W, E, and ultimate because it's technically a knock-up. So she's going to have a lot more roaming potential, a lot more angles to fish for plays and set stuff up. And bear in mind, the meta is changing to a more engage-heavy meta because we're nerfing enchanter items and runes and buffing engage items and runes, so she should do quite well into all these dash champs. Same thing for Morgana. She's placed very high on this tier list, not because she will use this item well, not that she won't use it well, but she's not necessarily the most amazing user, but Morgana as a whole is so absolutely amazing into engage champions, and giving her another item that is not just Leandri's or like Rylai's that's actually useful will make her so much better and more enjoyable to play, is what I expect. I also went ahead and tested some synergies I thought might work, but that don't actually work. For example, Annie does not get any haste on any of her abilities because the stun comes from her passive. For Heimerdinger also, he does not get any haste on his ultimate, even though he can cast Ultimate E, which is a stun. It doesn't work for Karma. She won't get any ultimate haste, even though she can cast RW, which is a tether. And the reason for that is because she casts R first, which counts as the cast, and R doesn't apply any sort of effects, and then she casts W, which is a separate instance of it. Vex works in the same way as Annie does, and then there's going to be some wild cards like Bard, for example, who will probably use this item quite well because it allows him to fish from her Qs, and it also applies on his ultimate. And the stats aren't necessarily bad, so it may replace Leandri some games. And I know there's one Malzahar main in high-elo who builds tank in Korea, so this will allow him to build an AAP item and then follow up with tank so that he can really burst and bully one person specific. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend this in ranked, guys. Anyways, thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.